Hello, the Astro 30 here. This is part 2 of Project Amplifier, and I have in front of me 2 of those heatsinks I was talking about in yesterday's video. I'll get to those in a minute. That's the receipt. I spent a grand total of $158.90 today. I have a 19-inch rack mount case, 2-unit high, which is roughly 88 millimeters at the front panel. It's a model PF 192UD2BLK, which means black. And look at the date of manufacture here, the 9th of February 2016. This is how long this case has been sitting in JCar for. So it's pretty obvious that these things aren't readily sold very often. But I'm going to open up the box and we're going to take a look at the actual case here. Now it comes with a product information sheet about the particular case, and it gives you ideas of how to assemble it and how to use it, because they actually have a floating internal panel known as the sub panel, which means you can actually pull your front panel controls back into the case and mount all the hardware to it rather than mounting it to the outside front panel. We'll have a look at that a little bit later. So what we've got here is the 2 sides. These are the 2 inner panels. One is a rear one for the back and the other one is the sub panel just mentioned. Now if you're not going to use the internal sub panel, you'll have that left over. You can use it as an internal separating panel if you want, somewhere in the middle of the case to act as a bit of shielding, because these are aluminium. And or if you make a mistake when drilling the rear panel, you've got a spare panel to fall back on. And this is the actual front panel that's mounted into the rack. And you get 2 little handles which go here and here. And these are the mounting rails, and there's only 8 of them. So that means you'd need 2 for the front and 2 for the back panels respectively if you're going to use the internal sub panel. And that only leaves you with 4 other mounting panels, rails rather, to mount stuff like transformers free of the top and bottom halves of the case. So it's much of the fact that you've really got to decide if you want the sub panel or you want multiple mounting rails, which is another thing I'm going to have to think about. But here's a bag of all the screws and the rubber feet that go on the bottom of the case. Nice, they're just self-adhesive. And of course we have both the top and bottom cover. Now there is a difference. The bottom one I believe is wider than the top, but I could be mistaken. No, they are actually the same size, they're just off center with each other. So let's start unpacking all the contents and actually put the case together and see what it actually looks like. Yes, I'm working on the floor because it is a big case and I don't have a lot of room on the desk at the moment. Now I just noticed something interesting when unpacking the top and bottom panels. Is the reason why they were staggered is because they've got these what look like M4, maybe M5 bolts actually spot welded, or however it's attached to the top of this inside panel of the top or bottom, and it can be either, and it's the same on the other one. This, I believe, is what you would use for a ground point, I guess. But the last rack mount case that I bought of this size didn't have that feature. That's a new one to me. I've never seen that before. But, okay, well, there's a earth point if you want to use it. I'm probably not. If it gets annoying, you can always take a little Dremel to it and cut it off. It's not that big of a deal. But yeah, that would be the bottom or the top, and obviously you put it face down, you don't want it sticking up. And interestingly, the two sides also have the same bolt in the center there. That's very interesting. Anyhow, with assembling this, I would suggest putting the vents on the side here towards the bottom, because then that's where your mounting rails are going to be mounted, is along these slots. So you've got 20 millimeters every so often of adjustability there. So yeah, that would be the bottom edge, and that would be the top edge. The same on this side. So that would look something like that. Okay, I've temporarily put all the screws and stuff in this little tray here, not to lose them. I'm going to start with the front panel. Now they do give you some countersink or countersunk screws and nuts. So I'm going to make this probably the front panel. There's tapped holes either end of these rails to go into the sides, but they don't use countersunk screws. These are just used for the panel. Now they do have a tapped hole here, but it's off center, it's not in the middle. So you'd have to, like, to get it central, use the hole next to it. Sort of like that. So let me just do that. I'm only going to loosely put it together, I'm not going to tighten everything. Well, that's interesting, I've never seen that before. This is the second panel, which is either the rear or the internal front. I've just noticed that this hole is drilled off. It doesn't line up with the hole that's in the rail behind it. And it's the only panel that's got that one hole that's off center. Looks like that these are drilled at 5mm from each end. This one's drilled at 10mm for some strange reason. However, that can be easily fixed by just drilling another hole to you know, get the screw to go through. But anyway, you should have 12 countersunk M3 screws that are 10mm long and 12 M3 nuts respectively. Okay, that fixed that problem. Just drilled another little 3mm hole. These are actually 4mm, but it doesn't matter. And it's still nice and square. So that's both the front and the back. Well, front internal sub and rear panel. Now, the one with the off hole, the 10mm off hole, I'll probably use on the inside. I think I've decided I am going to go with a sub panel design. But the basic idea now is, if we make this the front, is that we bring this up to here like that, and this one is going to be the rear panel. Make sure that both ends are the same, because there's two little notches at the end here. I was just making sure that it wasn't denoted just for the front. And so that's the basic idea, and the front panel can slide up to, well, in this case 10mm back into the case, and so can the rear panel, but you want to get that as, you know, flush at the back as possible. Then you have 4 mounting rails left over. So what I might do is, this is what these type of screws are for, with the little captive washer on, is I'm going to screw this side of the panel together, or case together, before screwing this side on, just so I can place all the other rails and, yeah, just have a quick little gander. Okay, so that's sort of the idea, and this is the front side, and that just will slide. Well, if that one wasn't too tight, it would slide back and forwards, and it would be separate of the front panel. So all your mounting hardware, like your pot nuts and screws and stuff, will go on this panel here, whilst this slips over the top, and you just have holes on the outside, obviously, to pass the rest of it through. This makes it a little bit more challenging to drill, but that's a bridge I'll cross later. Now, I found that I could not fit 2 heat sinks in here and have enough room for this large power supply board. So in the end, what I came up with was I can actually get these power amp modules to mount to this heatsink, but where I'm drilling for the transistor center holes, which is where these centers are, one is very close to a fin. That one's also close to a fin, but these two are free of a fin. So there might be a little bit of collateral damage to this fin and possibly that fin when I drill the holes, because I'm going to drill a 2.5mm, I think it is, or 2, and then tap it out with an M3 tap, and then just secure it that way. So I can then mount this heatsink facing the front, because then that gives me room up the back here. Well, I'm probably going to need another rail. I've got 2 left over. One is to support the top of the heatsink. Now there's no guide holes on either side of these side panels, so I think what I did when I built that guitar amplifier using the same case, I just drilled my final holes up the top here for where this had to be, and then this rail will be probably towards the front, at the bottom of course, because I'm going to get a 300mm square piece of aluminium and cut it, one to go all the way up to the front bar here. I'm probably going to need 2 sheets of aluminium actually. So it's only going to be up to where the edge of the heatsink ends, so there's going to be a panel right across here, so you won't be able to get to the solder underneath. You'd have to take the boards out, but there should just be enough room in here for the power supply, a 300 VA, that's right, 300 VA toroidal transformer, which is about as big as my hand. It's going to be sitting right here. And, well, if I get another piece of aluminium to go across the bottom here, the heatsink's going to be in the way. So it'll only have to come up to where the heatsink is. So I'll probably shift this over as far as I can, I guess. Right, to keep as well away from the mains as possible. That means I could probably turn that around. Yeah, give me a little bit more room for a transformer. So I'd have one panel plate, if you like, up here for all this electronics, and a smaller plate over this side between here and here, because these holes don't line up with the rails properly. So it'd be easier if there was a metal plate here and I just screwed it to the metal plate, and then there's room up here for the preamp, the sub-bass processor, and another small board which I'm going to have to make, which I'll explain later. But yeah, I want to keep the power supply side on one side of the case and all the audio electronics side on the other side of the case, and when I run the wires for the pots from the board to the front, they're all going to run up this side of the case, and all the mains wiring for the power switch and stuff is going to run up this side of the case. So we are actually keeping the mains circuitry well away from the signal circuitry. So there's going to be a preamp. So this whole area down here is going to be pretty cluttered. There's going to be a preamp, an input selector board, that sub-bass processor board I was talking about, yeah, and that other smaller board which I'm going to need for another reason. But that's what that looks like so far, with some of the electronics that aren't even assembled yet in there. So that's the plan for that. Okay, so I'm going to start with front panel. Doesn't matter which way around you put it. They give you these Allen type head. I think that's what's for the front panel to mount to the case, but I'm not 100% sure at the moment what it actually attaches to. Oh, I see, that's right, I remember. These pass out to the handles. So you really should put the screws for the handles on first before putting the sub panel in, because otherwise you won't get the screws through. And God, everything's wrapped in plastic. as I say, I haven't worked with one of these rack mount cases in years, but the last one I had wasn't this. This is like a sort of, I'm not even sure what material it is, but it's not metal. The last ones were a nice U-shaped metal. These look like plastic things. But yeah, where is this manufactured? China, more than likely. So I might just be able to get the, yeah, I've got just enough clearance to get the screws through. I'm going to put the screws in there. That's one. I was looking for the others and I've already got them out. So that's one. I'm not going to tighten it obviously because it's got to come back off anyway. But I'm just doing this for a point of reference so that we can all see what the thing looks like when it is assembled. Okay, and there's the top and bottom panels put on, plus the front just loosely, as I said, because the edges of the screw are coming into contact with the sub panel inside. Now, here's another what the fuck moment. They've given you extra holes either side. There's one here and there's one on the other opposite side to put a screw in, but there's no actual hole or tapped hole in there to even put the screw in, and it's the same on both sides of the top and bottom respectively. So it's kind of a what the fuck moment there. As you can see, there's plenty of ventilation here, so I should be able to dissipate enough heat to the outside well. Now, this is the bottom, so that means, technically speaking, I can now, if I want to, stick these rubber feet on. Well, I guess I can because, well, I can. All of this case has got to come all the way back apart again for drilling, well, the front and back panels anyway. But for now it's going to stay in one assembled piece. So it can take up as much room as possible and piss me off for the next month or so. Now these self-adhesive feet, the self-adhesive tends to come off the back of the foot. So I'm going to put him roughly about there. I mean, if I wanted to get some professional looking feet, I could drill a hole through the case and, you know, put some really good looking ones on. But I don't really see the point. Now, if I could get this thing off, I would. And about the same. I'm just guessing, I'm just using this where the screws are as a guide of where to put the foot. Doesn't matter if it's not perfectly straight. It's not going to be seen anyway. So there's that one. And finally, this one. Now if I'd done this on the wrong side, like I've just stuck them on the top or something, well, both the top and bottom are the same, so I could just swap the panels around. Wouldn't make too much of a difference. So even if I'd stuck the feet on the top, not realising that I'd done that, I could always change it. And that is a 19-inch rack mount case. Very expensive too, so when you start drilling into this for your front panel and your rear panel, you want to make sure that you get it right. That means measure twice, thrice, or even more times, and drill once. Now this is 3mm thick aluminium, so that would take a little bit more effort to drill. I'm going to be using a drill press for that. Also, you may see the bare aluminium underneath the round holes, so you could always just get a little bit of black paint, matte black paint or something, painted on the inside of the drilled hole, just to sort of make it blend in a bit. But this is probably the cheapest version of this case I've seen. The ones that I've used in the past were a lot more professionally made than that. You had anodized, nice looking gunmetal grey front panels. The sub panel and rear panel were the same. The case was a little bit more, I don't know, much more professional looking than this. This looks okay, but it's not the same as they used to make them. Let me just put it that way. And for the price you pay for it, $119, you'd expect it to at least be somewhat decent. But project's coming on. This is going to be a thorough pain in the ass to drill, but you get that. And I am not going to be sticking any front panel label artwork on it like I did on the previous amp, because, well, it's paper, it looks tatty, and up against this material would look absolutely like shit in a few years' time. So what I'm going to do is what I did similarly with that bass amp that I built. All I did was printed out some small little tiny labels, the same colour as the panel, like with white text on it on a black background, and just cut them out and stuck them just underneath each of the controls. And it didn't look too bad. Or I could just get a Brother P touch and use that and mark the controls that way, but the thing is that is white, so it'll stand out like dog's balls. Yeah, I haven't decided yet. I'll probably do the same route that I did with the bass amp, was just like print out all the things that I need, like bass, middle, treble, input, output, speakers, left, right, whatever, on a piece of that stuff that I usually use to stick on front panels. But just the words, cut around the words, printed on a black background, and then just stick it up against the case. And then maybe I'll probably spray this front panel with some varnish just to protect those labels as best as possible in the interim. But yeah, that's it. So that's this part of the video complete. This is the case. This is what I'm going with. I've decided on one heatsink. It'd probably be enough. I mean, it should dissipate enough heat there, so I'm not really particularly worried. Would have liked a slightly longer one, but you can't get them, not at JK anyway. I've looked online, they're harder to find there too. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next part. I'm the Astro 30, and if you enjoyed this video, please remember to rate, comment and subscribe below, and you can always follow me on Facebook and Twitter. The links are in the description as usual. Also, you can support me on PayPal by donating as little or as much as you want, because your donation allows me to buy stuff to play around with on the channel. And speaking of channels, check out this guy, 12 Volt Vids. He has some great content to do with electronics on his channel. Anyway, this is the Astro 30 saying see ya, have a great day.